Hey, Saber, can you hear me? I can't hear her either. I can. I can't hear you. Ah, no. Let's see. Do I have my volume on? Oh, good. It looks like it's connected now.
There it is.
Oh, okay.
Oh, well, I was feeling pretty rejected. Nobody was joining me. And I've been sitting here for 10 or 20, 15 minutes. And Liz just called and she said, people can't get in. And I said, well, I don't know what's going on. But the good thing of it is y'all are here. Hi, Shonda. Hi, Vince. Another Vince. How about that? There you are. Oh, good. You can hear me? Cool. All right. Very good. Very good. Well, we're going to try to go over some South Carolina forms, and I have some news for you today. I just got some good information yesterday on the. What are you two there together? Y'all just fooled me. No, this is strange. Okay, now I hear you. No, I don't hear you. Can you hear me? Oh, okay. Okay. Not that I'm important, but I am the one that's going to teach.
Can you hear us now?
Now I can hear you.
Good.
How many years have we been saying, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now? You'd think we would you would think we wouldn't still be asking, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Hey, Saber, so I just want to do a quick introduction. This is Shanta. She's going to be the new person on our team that's helping us with compliance and all the things that we have been struggling with.
Oh, good. Hi, Shanta. You're
Hello.
a brave girl, honey. You're a brave girl, I tell you. But a good team, I got to tell you. You're on a good team, but you got to be brave.
So we might have more people from the team joining. So Vince is virtual. He's joining from the.
Yes, I see Vince. I love Vince. Joins me a lot.
And we'll see if we can get Nick Reinhardt and Ingrid, which is an agent, join back in July to join us as well. So they should be hopefully hopping on soon.
So Nick's on your team now.
Nick changed over to our team in April.
Okay, well, I thought I remember seeing somewhere, now that you mentioned, I thought, yeah, I do think I saw something on that. Cool. Okay, so Shanta, are you an agent or are you an admin or both?
So both.
Both, okay. All right.
Yeah.
So are you an agent in South Carolina?
I did have a license in South Carolina.
Because today's the South Carolina classes.
Okay.
I thought, well, I better make sure you're South Carolina, needing the South Carolina class or wanting the South Carolina class. So, well, you said Nick is probably going to join us.
Yes, he's trying to get on now. I think he just has some.
Okay. I don't know who had tried to get in touch with Liz, but she said she was reaching back out. Did you all come through the link on the calendar?
Yes, on the BKB resources. Yes.
Yeah. Well, she said that, and that seemed to be. I'm hoping it's working because I went through basically through Zoom, and I think the platforms or the browsers are fighting. That Chrome is fighting Edge, and Edge is fighting Chrome, and they messed me up so many times in these classes. So I'm so at least we got here today, didn't we?
Yes, we are here.
We are here. Well, while the others are coming, let me get started with some of the forms, because some of the forms I first want to bring to your attention, you may or may not already have. I would, Shanta, the first thing that has to happen if you're an agent only, you're going to have to join the South Carolina Realtor Association so that you can use their forms. Now, if you're using the forms for the team, you probably already have that available. So I just want to make sure. Now let me get our forms up while we're talking. If I can do two things at one time, don't count on it. I'm blonde, okay?
That's all right.
Let's see. Well, you know what? There it is. I'm going to share the screen and I want to pull up these forms. Okay. Well, you don't see the forms, do you?
No.
Aha, there you are. Now you see the form, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. We are cooking now. This is the application form. And again, there's Nick. He did get here. Sorry we missed you a little while ago, Nick.
Hey,
Glad
Saber, how
you're
you
here.
doing?
Good. I'm glad you're here today.
I'm glad to
No, I
be
tell
here.
you, we've had some technology issues today, haven't we? But you know what?
Yeah,
It's perseverance. That's what realtors are made of, is perseverance.
yep, that's right.
There you go. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
I think probably you already have membership in the Realtor Association. Because you've been doing some forms before, I think. But anyway, I always start this class because it's very concerning to people when they can't get to their South Carolina forms. And the only way you get to them is having membership, you know, with the South Carolina Association. So I'm not going to go through this application because you probably already have that. Now, let's see. I want to come on down here. I'm not going to go through that. This is your South Carolina disclosure of real estate brokerage relationships. This is, if you're familiar with the North Carolina working with real estate agents, this is the comparable form. It's just like when you speak to someone, the first time you talk about substantial information, you know, like why are they buying? Can they afford to buy? Have they talked to a lender? All those questions, finding out about above aging, that's called first substantial contact. Well, this is the form in South Carolina that you have to use to talk with people initially. And it's called the South Carolina Disclosure of Real Estate Brokerage Relationships. And then, wow, that's a pretty hefty title, isn't it? But in South Carolina, they have something called transaction brokerage. Transaction brokerage is a limited way of working with people. It's not a representation. It's actually a relationship. It's like I say, it's a limited way of working with clients. We in Ballantyne, Keller Williams Ballantyne, along with a number of other larger firms, opted not to include the transaction brokerage because, again, it's a limited service and we don't do limited service. We are a full service brokerage, and therefore just to offer that customer level of service, we opted not to include that in the way we work with people. We do work with clients and we work on an agency relationship, okay? But now when you're looking at this little disclosure form, remember that this form is your disclosure as to how you and your firm work with clients. That's what this is. This is nothing to do with them disclosing anything to you. This is you saying to the person, and I love this, you are a customer of the brokerage firm initially, but you can become a client. And I like the next page says, it's your choice. Okay. You can become a client. And the way you become a client is described right in this little area here. For a seller and or a buyer, the way they become a client, they go into a relationship called a single agency, a dual agency, disclosed dual agency, or designated agency. Now, when they go into the single agency, that is one agent representing one client, okay, in one transaction. It's obviously called single agency, but you are actually representing them, and you are you have fiduciary duties. Your fiduciary duties, if you remember from pre-licensing classes, see there right here, the client level services or duties. You have obedience, loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, not accountable, accounting, and resource skill and care. Remember that acronym old car? That's what that is. It's old car. That is your basically your pledge or your promise. This is what you are offering in the client relationship. And in that relationship, you're going to use these traits or these duties, whether or not you're a single agent or a dual agent. The firm can be a dual agent, and you can be an individual dual agent, or you could be a designated agent. Now, I'm not going to go too much further on that because we're going to talk about it when we get into the buyer agency agreement. And the same thing when you're disclosing it initially to a person, letting them know that we work in those capacities, but you're not going to spend much time on them. And right here, I love this. It's your choice. You can choose to remain a customer and represent yourself with or without a transaction brokerage agreement. In other words, we can't work with you, but you can represent yourself. Or you can choose to hire a brokerage firm to represent you, which is what we'll talk about in a minute as we're talking about buyer agency. Or here, you can say you can represent by the brokerage firm if you decide to go under the several services of dual agency. Now, right here, this is really important. This document is not a contract. That's one of your key things. It's not a contract. And sometimes people think because you told them that they're signing something that's a legal binding contract. This is not a contract. This is just a disclosure, but you need to have them sign that you gave it to them. That's all that signature is. And it explains that right here. And that has to be in every folder, okay? Or every opportunity, every loop, whichever program you all use. Now, this right here describes a little bit more about the South Carolina brokerage. One day, one of the agents that was on the class said, well, can't you just give us a little 2-minute speech? Well, this is your little 2-minute speech. If you learn this, this suffices your disclosure of the brokerage relationships. Like I said, it's just a little script for you. Okay, that's why I included it in this stack of papers. Now, this is going to be your best friend. You want to print this out. This is, and by the way, I will send you these forms after we finish the class, okay? As you can see, we have a hard time getting on to the class, much less getting forms to you before the class. So, put your email address in the chat box, and I'll send it to you. Now, this little form, this is something that I made up for myself. It's a cheat sheet. And I have found it helpful through the years. I don't know how many years I've been keeping this updated. I update it every time there's a form change in North Carolina or South Carolina. And as you can imagine, I started in North Carolina first, and then added South Carolina. So as I've learned to learn the form names in South Carolina, I found they were very different from the form names that I was accustomed to in North Carolina. So that's what the form, that's what this little cheat sheet's about. If you know the name of the form in either South Carolina or North Carolina, you can look in the next column and see the corresponding form. So as we're talking about today, we're going to be talking about listing agreements. And so right here in South Carolina, it's called exclusive right to sell agreement, listing agreement. It's number 220. And the last time it was copyrighted was 2020. They do not update their forms every year. North Carolina does update their forms every year. So if you'll see over here, the form number of exclusive right to sell listing agreement is number 101, North Carolina, and it was updated in July of 2022. Same thing, we're coming down here. In any of these, like this right here, This is your residential property and owner's disclosure. We're going to go over that today too. They also have a residential property condition disclosure in South Carolina, and it was updated in 2021, whereas this was updated in 2022. There are these forms right here all have to do with listings, whether it's South Carolina or North Carolina. Beyond the grade area, all the rest of them are going to have to do with buyers. All right. So again, it's just so that you have a little help or cheat sheet to know which forms to be looking for when you're putting together either an offer or a listing. And as you see right here, I did update it in July 2022. And I try to keep one of those handy in my desk drawer because I'm forever forgetting the names of the forms or the number. Now this is what we call a handout or checklist that you can print out. We have lots of checklists. We have checklists that are in command. We have checklists within the team. I'm sure you all got a lot of checklists too. Well, this is a multicolored checklist of what compliance is looking for. And hopefully if you need to print something, this will help you. I'm not going to go through it because you can certainly read through it just like I can. So just be aware that you have that checklist and it's available on KWB resources under checklist if you need it. Now let's talk about the listing agreement in South Carolina. This is the exclusive right to sell agreement. That's very important. You do not want to get the exclusive agency agreement. If you remember in pre-licensing, the difference in the exclusive right versus the exclusive agency, with the agency agreement, anybody can sell it, all right, and get a commission. If you use the exclusive right to sell, no matter who sells it, you get a commission. So you want to make sure that you use the right to sell and do not allow the seller to sell it himself or another agent to come in and you get cut out of the deal. All right, because you're going to be the one who's advertising, you're going to be the one who's spending dollars to get buyers in the door. And so you want the exclusive right to sell. Now, the number on that is Form 220. So you do not want to use a form for a listing agreement other than 220. There will be occasionally someone who will ask you that. We do not see it that much. People even asking about it, but I want you to be aware of the difference. Say the seller says, well, my neighbor said that they wanted to buy my house if I ever put it on the market. And they said, well, can I sell it to anybody if I bring the buyer? I want to be able to collect the commission, in other words, or save the commission. I'm not going to pay you. That would be an exclusive agency. And if I were you, I would hedge off of that one. So because we're right at this particular time when you're going to be investing in it, you don't want the seller to be able to sell it without you. Now, having said that, there is something called an exception. In MLS, there is a field that you can mark. And occasionally you will have, in the situation I just said, the seller said the neighbor had wanted to buy it, and the seller could say, if you will accept the neighbor, I will list so that you can sell it to anybody else, and I would not expect you to give up your commission. You can take an exclusive right to sell and make a note. I believe it's paragraph 17. I'll show you in a minute. There's a place that you could write in there that the neighbor, Bob and Susie Jones, or whatever their name is accepted from this agreement. So then in the MLS, you would say there is an exception, which would again comply with what you've got in here. But by and large, that would be the only situation that I would take a listing, knowing that somebody else might come up to want to purchase it, and I wouldn't get reimbursed for my expenses and my commission. All right. Now, South Carolina has
it spells it out right up front here that this agreement is between the seller. You're going to put the seller's name right here. This will be the seller's name. And it's with Keller Williams Valentine, the firm. An agency agreement is not with you as an individual. It's not with the firm's name and your individual name. It is with the brokerage that you are affiliated with. The brokerage that you are affiliated with is the Keller Williams Valentine area real estate company. And from throughout this, when they talk about a broker, they're talking about the firm. And often when they refer to the firm, they refer to the broker or the BIC, okay? Because in South Carolina, we don't have BICs or brokers that are outside of the brokerage firm. Now, when you come right here, this is a really important paragraph right here. From the period of time beginning on and a certain date, and I've got I highlight this obviously, we'll use the date of October the 15th and ending on February the 28th, 2022. I need to update my form, don't I? But by and large, before October the 15th, you cannot talk about this listing. You cannot advertise this listing. It is a ghost listing until October the 15th. And right here, see, this doesn't have to be the date that they sign the agreement. This is not your effective date. This is the date that you can start marketing on October the 15th. Now, when you start marketing, there are two forms for MLS. One will be what's called your coming soon, and the other one would be your firm exclusive. All right. So you've got to know how and when you can start marketing and which way are you going to market? Are you going to go in as an active listing on October the 15th? Or are you going to go into another category such as coming soon or firm exclusive? Now, keep in mind October 15th, and let's go down here and look at these other forms that go with this. The MLS forms look like this. Let me increase this size a little bit so you can see a little better. Is that better? Okay, the coming soon form right now, the last one that was updated was 9/1/2021. And I've highlighted in here a little bit of the difference in how you submit them for North Carolina and South Carolina. So you want to read that. The important thing on the coming soon no show status is that if this property is shown by anybody, including the seller, during the time that it's in the coming soon status, it's $1,000 fine. Did you hear me? It's a ghost listing. You don't talk about it until October the 15th. If you're going to go into coming soon October the 15th, then you want to make sure that nobody sees the house. You can talk to people, but you cannot let anybody in the house to see it. And that means the plumber cannot let the painter can't let the neighbor in, the plumber can't let the neighbor in, the seller can't, and you certainly can't have any showings scheduled, because you as the agent will be fined $1,000. And yes, we have two of our little angels who have had to pay $1,000. That they don't have a one-time to them. All right. And this was right back in 2020 when we first get this clear cooperation policy. So just make sure you don't show. Now, right here where it says marketing and active date, this date right here is going to be the date that you're going to make it active in MLS, not coming soon. It can go coming soon on October the 15th, but you want to leave it in the coming soon category for, let's say, 7 days. So on October the 22nd, that's when it's going to be marketed to the general public. That's the day anybody can come and see it. that's going to be what we call active in MLS. And on October the 22nd is what MLS calls the marketing date. Now, I know it is as confusing as everything. Get these titles right, or get these identification titles right. The marketing date is the active date in MLS. So when you enter it in MLS, let's say on the October the 15th, when you enter it, then there is a field for marketing date. That would be what you would have put right here, that whatever date, let's say October the 22nd, okay? So that 22nd is going to go in marketing. So it's going to stay in coming soon, no show. It will automatically go active on the 22nd. All right. Now you could go in there and extend it if you needed to in coming soon, but by and large, if you don't extend that date in MLS before October 22nd, it's going to go active. So you want to make sure that you have the date that you want it to be active in MLS. Okay. Now on the coming, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question about this. So I just wanted to check. So because this is coming soon. It's a little different when it's firm exclusive, right?
Yeah. I'm getting ready to explain that.
Okay, and really quick before you move on from coming soon, if I want to change the coming soon date, I have that option. Just I need to do it before it comes active on the MLS. So say for instance,
Correct.
the seller says not ready yet. Okay.
Correct. If you've got it in there, you need to change that date because it's going to automatically go active on whatever date you've got in as a marketing date.
Yeah.
That makes sense?
Yes.
Okay. And then coming soon is in MLS in that category. Anybody who has access to MLS is going to be able to see the listing. The words of the listing, they just can't see the property. Okay. They just can't go in the property. So you want to make sure that because see, there are going to be people that's going to be checking in showing time when it's available to show, and they're going to be making appointments. So at least that's what you hope. And so when they go into showing time, our agent goes to showing time, the time frame or the calendar is blocked off when it's coming soon. But then it shows that you can make your appointment, when it goes active. So those kind of coincide there. Now, obviously, these are so important paragraphs because MLS wants the seller to initial every paragraph, and you think, oh my gosh, we're going to be here all day. Yes, you will, because you want to make sure that anything that's in red, obviously, you want to pay attention to it, because what the form writers was trying to say is, Mr. Seller, you're going to have a better chance of selling your house with a broader audience if you don't go into coming soon. You just need to go active. Well, we're not ready to go active generally when we sign the listing agreement. I mean, you got to get pictures, you got to get measurement. I mean, it's got to paint the front door. There's a lot of stuff that has to be done. So most of our agents use that period of time to get ready to go active. That's what it was designed for. It also teases the market a little bit so that if agents are looking for certain types of properties, they can see if that's coming in coming soon. And to be honest with you, we've had such a hot market the last year. We've actually had multiple offers in the coming soon status where people that didn't even see the house. The inventory was so short and people wanted a certain neighborhood, or they liked the outside of the home or whatever. And we've actually had not only offers, but multiple offers on property. So, and that can happen too. And if that were to happen, it has to go, if you were to get an offer, it has to go active immediately. But I'm not going to go that far. Okay, let's scooch on down here and let me show you. Those of you who are aware of the admin side, the property address goes in here and they'll probably fill in automatically. You got your seller signature, you got your listing agent signature, and you got the member participant. Well, who in the heck is the member participant? And you say to yourself, well, I'm a member participant of the MLS. No, you're not. You're a subscriber of the MLS. The member participant is the firm and the broker in charge of the firm. So as the member participant, we have our own language, you know, I have to sign right here. You sign right here as the listing agent, and I sign right here as the member participant. So when you send your forms out to be signed by the seller, you can order the signatures, the order in which they are applied. So you send it to the seller first, then you can send it to yourself, and then you can send it to me. Or you can sign it first, then send it to the seller, but I should be the last one, okay? And that's supposed to be done all within 1 day, all right? So just keep in mind who the member participant is and that I have to sign it. All right, now that is what's called coming soon status. Now we have another status, it's called firm exclusive. The firm exclusive is this one. It looks just like the other one, all right, except it's firm exclusive. And the last date it was updated, it was April the 22nd, 2022. So you want to make sure you have the right date on the form. Firm exclusive means it is an in-house transaction. It is not going to be in MLS at all. Other agents, I should say agents of other firms, cannot even be talked to about your listing. Not only do you have to keep it a ghost, you cannot even talk to another agent in another firm. Once you do, it has to immediately go active in MLS, because if it's introduced to one agent out there, it has to be introduced to all agents. So an in-house, and what our MLS calls firm exclusive, it means that only the agents in our Keller Williams Ballantine firm can show it or can sell it. All right. If another agent of another firm gets wind of it and they call you, you have a decision to make. You can't talk to them right then. You have to call the seller and say, we have an interested party. They've contacted me. Do you want to go active in MLS, or do you want to still retain the firm exclusive agreement? And if the seller agrees, you would want to terminate the firm exclusive, and you use Form 7. No, you can't use Form 17. That's in North Carolina. In South Carolina, if you terminate the firm exclusive, you have to go back to the original listing agreement and write in the listing agreement that firm exclusive agreement is hereby terminated. Listing will go active on such and such a date. And at that time, then you can go back and you can talk to that agent of the other firm, because now it's active in MLS. Now, this is the form that allows you to only sell within our firm. I'll show you how to terminate it in just a moment. First, I need to show you that this information here has to be obviously on here, where you get the seller's signature. What happened to the box on that? The seller's signature, the address, and here's your Keller Williams Ballantine, that we're the ones that are going to sell it with our agents. Again, there are several boxes that need to be initialed here and here. Now, this is a real important thing here. You see, that's where I've highlighted it. If your seller says, I do not want it in MLS anytime, ever, I do not want it in MLS, then they check right here. If he says, well, I don't care if you put it in MLS after you sell it, then he can check right here. And that would allow you to put it in MLS. And that way other people can use it as a comp in that neighborhood. Okay. Because, you know, when we're doing our CMAs, we obviously want more comps in the neighborhood if we can find them. So that would allow you to put it in MLS as already sold for comp purposes only. So we have to have one of these checked on this agreement. Now, here we go again with this pattern. See this pattern? Signature of the seller. And they added the listing name here. Maybe they thought the listing agent couldn't write the name so that the signature didn't tell what the real name was. So the listing name, and here's the signature of listing agent. And looky here. Here's where I get to sign again. You see there? Signature of the listing brokerage's member participant. Now, the reason I'm putting a lot of attention to this is if it is a firm exclusive, I have to have it within 48. Well, I think they're calling it 2 business days instead of 48 hours now, 2 business days. Because I have to register it with MLS. Even though we don't turn it in, MLS doesn't know anything but the address and they know who the listing agent is. But we do have to register it with the MLS and it has to be done within those 2 business days. If I don't have it within those 2 days, how am I going to register it? And we could get fined. So it's really important when you take a listing that is firm exclusive that you get these signatures and get it to me last. And that date right here should not be further out than 2 business days from these dates right here. Typically, we're going to go for the date the seller signs because you cannot just decide not to sign it and hold it out. That's not the way it works. It goes when the seller says this is what he wants followed, then we've got to follow it. So you want to make sure to get that to me so that I can then be able to register it with MLS. Now in that's the form that we have to have for MLS. Let me show you in the listing agreement. We're going to go back up to the listing agreement. In just a minute, let me get up here for enough. There's a section 10, I think it is 13 here, right here. This is the listing agreement. I've switched back to the listing agreement now. Right here, if you're going to put it in active status or coming soon, remember you have to have the agreement, then you're going to check this box right here. And that would be done on, remember the date was October the 15th. That was the date you could start marketing it. So if you're going to do that, then you want to initial this right here. If it's going to go coming soon, then this must come with the same listing agreement. Okay. Now right here, this option right here, where it says owner does or does not agree that the listing will be placed in electronic marketing mediums, including but not limited to the internet, MLS internet, IDX program, or other similar online computer services. If they don't agree, the only way you can sell it would be firm exclusive because it's going to go into MLS if we turn it into MLS. So make sure that the seller agrees. And then here's the other option. If it's not coming soon or not active, your only other option is the firm exclusive. The firm exclusive is outlined right here as far as the state listing agreement. The MLS agreement is what I just showed you. So we're going to have one or the other of those agreements, right? Unless you're just going to go active on October the 15th. Now, right here, let me show you this while I'm here. See number 28, right here where it says other terms and conditions. We have a fixtures addendum, and I'm going to show you that in a minute. But right here, coming soon, no-show status, seller authorization form. If you're going to go coming soon and use that MLS form, then it must be listed right here. If you're not, then obviously you don't list it. You would list the firm exclusive. Now, if you've got the firm exclusive and you want to go back to, let's say you're going to go back and go active, then right here you're going to mark through this because we're no longer going to do the firm exclusive. And this is where you would put the seller request firm exclusive to be terminated, listing to go active on such and such a date, whatever date that you decided to do it. Now, what if you decide the seller says, okay, let's go back and go coming soon. You're going to have a firm exclusive for a few days or weeks maybe, and you didn't get the action that you wanted. Or maybe it gave the seller the time that he needed to get the house remodeled. Then you say, well, I think I will put it in coming soon. You can go from firm exclusive to coming soon, then to active. But you have to terminate this firm exclusive first. You cannot go from coming soon to firm exclusive. Because once it's been in that status, it's got to go on in to go into active. Okay. So there is not a separate form. You have to write on here that the firm exclusive is being terminated and listed to go active. So you want to put it, that's where you would put it. All right, let's go back up here now and work through our listing agreement. Now that we've covered that first paragraph, I told you that was a pretty heavy paragraph, right? You have to have a beginning date and an end date. That's what you've got right here. When you start to work on a listing, you always want to pull the tax record. The tax records and maybe a data sheet from a previous listing of this particular property, or maybe there's some listings in the neighborhood that you want to peruse and find out if there's any information that you need to gather from that. Do not ever copy a former listing. You don't know who that agent is, and you don't know if that agent knows what they're doing or not. And for goodness sakes, don't take a chance. All right. You do your own research. You be the one who's the expert on this property, because you're being paid nice dollars, and the seller deserves that. Okay. You be the professional that I know you can be. So when you pull out the information from the tax records and maybe previous listings, you're going to see the lot, block, and section number. You're going to see a subdivision most of the time in the tax records. The address, make sure the address is the same that's in the tax records. Sometimes it's different because the mail delivery is different, but just make sure you have that. Now, the tax map number in South Carolina is what we refer to as the parcel ID. All right. When you're looking in MLS, up on the top right-hand side, you'll see some numbers, and you'll see that blue line, that hyperlink in MLS. When you click on that, it takes you right into the tax records, right? Well, you've got that number is what you want to add right here, tax map number. And on the tax record, you will see it. Sometimes it's listed as parcel ID. Most of the time it's listed as tax map number. Again, city and county. Now, here's another one of those paragraphs that's loaded. You see right here? It says the real estate described herein includes all improvements, fixtures, appurtenances, and the additional property, if any. There's one word in South Carolina for fixtures, and it's fixtures. What is a fixture? What is a fixture in South Carolina? In the North Carolina contracts, what is it? I think there's 30 some, a list of what's a fixture. Just yesterday, did I not get an email from an experienced agent who said, are blinds, the blinds convey? And I said, are blinds fixtures? Are they affixed? And she said, no, they're not attached to the windowsill. And I said, what does the windowsill have to do with it? Are they attached to hang? And so anyway, it was an interesting discussion we had. But needless to say, a blind is attached, or it can't be hanging there. All right. So a fixture, one of these longtime South Carolina instructors told me one day, she said, use this illustration. If you can pick the house up and turn it upside down, what falls off is not a fixture. Anything else is a fixture. And I said, well, that gives me a mental picture, but it still doesn't define a fixture. So because of that, the broker in charge and I, the broker in charge down at Fort Mill, Baxter, Keller Williams, got their attorney to do us a list here, and it'll look remarkably like the North Carolina list. You can tell but these are the things that stay with the house, right? So if you would use this fixtures addendum, you would check here, that's a listing. Then you're going to go down this list with your seller. Use it as a worksheet. Yes, it's an addendum to the contract, but by and large, what you want to do is to have an understanding with the seller, what the seller anticipates leaving and what the seller wants to take. Sellers don't sell houses every day. I hope you do, but sellers don't. So you've got to take into consideration, they don't know what to think of what's going to stay and what they want to take with them until they start packing. And then they take everything with the kitchen sink, you know. So you want to have this time of education. Let's call it that way. This is the time you're going to talk about these things. See right here, there's blinds. The blinds would be anticipated to be a fixture that would stay. If there's blinds or shades, let's say in the children's room or in the den or certain areas, they can choose not to leave it, but they need to know they have to make a choice. If they choose not to leave it, right here, you've got to come over here and list it right here. If the seller does not intend to convey or to leave, then you would put blinds in children's room or curtains in children's room. Maybe it's something else like the attached wall and or door mirrors. The point is the seller has a choice if it is attached, and the seller needs to know what is considered to be attached as a fixture. Now, in North Carolina, in the contract, and it's not in the South Carolina contract, in the North Carolina contract, and what I use in my own mind to think what's an attachment, how much damage is it going to cause if I take that down off that wall? Am I going, in North Carolina contract says you have to fix it back like in its original condition. TV mounts. TV mounts was one of the things that for a long time was an issue. But now sellers have decided they can buy a new mount cheaper. They can fix the wall back from taking that mount off of it, because it destroys that section of the wall, and then you have to paint the whole wall. So just have those discussions so the seller knows he has a right to choose, and the buyer is going to expect certain things. So all that to say, use this little form. It is very simple, and it basically keeps you on the same page as what's going to stay and what's not going to stay. We often run into this with appliances. And read my lips. Do not ever write all appliances. Do not ever write the word all. All is nondescript. You can't litigate on something that says all. All right. So if you want appliances, you say, and in this case, you could say all appliances, including, but why don't you just put appliances, refrigerator, washer, dryer? And on here, you already have the stove or whatever, but make sure that you know that if there's an appliance that's going to be staying, that it is identified in the contract. If it's not in the contract, it doesn't exist. All right. Lenders do not want things of personal value. They're not going to want a grandmother's bedroom set. They don't want the patio set. They want things that are attached to the property, because that's an appurtenance or a fixture. But they do not want these personal items, which a washer and a dryer and a refrigerator are personal items that can be moved. They're not fixtures. So make sure that you identify that and clarify it as to if it conveys or doesn't convey. Now, right here, if it's leased or not owned, a lot of times fuel tanks or maybe security systems. Okay. Now, this is a little form, like I say, that I have it in here for you, and it's in your KWB resources. Now, let me scoot back up here. there. That's where you can put fixtures addendum here, or you can put fixtures addendums back there in that paragraph 27 I showed you a moment ago. Now, right here, although you've gone through the disclosure, you went through the brokerage relationship disclosure. This is where they're going to initial that you did. I'm not really sure why we have to have the initial, because we've already got the disclosure with the signature, but nevertheless, the form writers ask for a signature, an initial here. Now, right in here, this is really important. If you're familiar with the North Carolina agency agreements, dual agency and designated agency is included in the form itself. In South Carolina, they are independent forms, all right? So you have the discussion with them based upon, and you can say, remember when we talked about that first form about brokerage relationships, we talked about single agency and we talked about dual agency and disclosed dual agency. Remember when we talked about that? Well, this is where you have a chance to initial, if you will consider, you see that word right there? May be considered. They don't choose at this time. In North Carolina, they choose at that time. They do the agency agreement. In South Carolina, they have to choose at the time of the offer based upon the fact of whether or not it is dual agency or designated. So there are a few people who will not consider it. Most people do check that they will consider it, all right? They consider the dual agency and they consider designated agency. Now, depending on if they do initial this, let's go down here and look at the forms that you can use to solidify that. And these are forms that are produced by the state legislators. You see this little thing right here? This is called a state seal. And when you see the state seal on a form, that means it comes from the legislators. It's law. It's not, and it's not that our state forms from the Realtors Association are not just as valid, but this is law, okay? So this form and the designated form look very similar. Dual agency right here, this would be if you as an individual are going to do dual agency. You cannot be an individual dual agent unless the firm is a dual agent, okay? So if you're going to represent the buyer and the seller on this listing, you would need to have the dual agency agreement. I'm not going to tell you not to do it. I've done many of them myself, and sometimes they work better to do that way. I'm saying if you're a new agent, you might not want to start that way, right? You might want to choose to represent your seller, since we're talking about listings today, and you might want to suggest that that a designated agent handle and work with the buyer. And in that case, then you're going to use this form. Like I said, it looks very similar, but it's called designated agency. And what happens a lot of times, particularly in our firm, we have so many agents and a lot of listings, thank goodness. You'll be, let's say you're doing a listing, you're doing an open house for your listing. A buyer agent comes in with a buyer, or the buyer identifies the buyer's agent as somebody with Keller Williams Valentine. Well, then you know immediately that that's going to set up a designated agency situation, because you already represent the seller, right? If the other agent that's representing the buyer is with Keller Williams, then they're going to be designated to take care of the buyer. And therefore, if that buyer wants to write an offer, that agent needs to add this form, because that's designated agency. And the way they do it is on page 2. Obviously, there's a lot of explanation to go into this, but right here, just going through the transaction, right at the end of the designated agency form, right here, you're going to put my name as the supervisory broker. You are representing the seller, so your name is going to go here, and that buyer's agent's name is going to go here. The buyer agent then comes down here and gets the buyer's signature, but Keller Williams Valentine. That buyer, as the associate licensee, can sign this right here on behalf of the Keller Williams Valentine. that form needs to be presented at the same time they present an offer on the property. All right, so when they bring the agreement to buy and sell, which is what they call a sales offer in South Carolina, this must come with it, because that is establishing who you can talk to about what, and who you're going to have that confidentiality with. And it establishes with the seller and the buyer what the relationship is going to be. So that form is used more than the dual agency form, quite honestly. All right. So just be aware of those two forms. And what I typically recommend and what I do when I'm going through this little section right here on the listing agreement, I'm going to have those forms available, to show them. So it's a lot of words, but by and large, is what I explained to you in the brokerage relationship disclosure. And what you want to do is make sure that they know you will come back to them for the decision at the time it would be needed. If it's never a dual agency situation or designated, they won't see those forms again. Okay. Now, when you come in here, right here is where you write out the sales price or the list price. You write it out like a check in words, and then you put the numerical value right here. Now, look at this right here. It says pay broker a total. Get that in your mind. This is your total fee, okay, on the listing. A total fee is not only going to include your commission, it's also going to include compensation to other brokerages. And this is on page 2. In our relating on how brokerage relationships, the only brokerage relationship we are cooperative with that we cooperate with is buyer agency. We do not do transaction brokerage. I told you that before. As a firm, we don't. As a firm, we don't offer sub-agency. You are the sub-agent. You are the firm is the agent. You're the sub-agent representing that seller. Why would we cooperate with another firm that wants to bring in somebody to take your place? They don't know what's going on with that house like you do. So we do not cooperate with sub-agents. We only cooperate with buyer agents. All right. So whatever amount of money that you put right here, and let's just use what we've used a lot for many years and we all like is 6% total and 3% to the buyer agent. It does not have to be that way. And in our market, it seldom is, okay? But let's just use those for illustration. Right here is where you put 3% and come back up here. This is your total, not a dollar amount, a percent amount. And this is where you would put 6. Knowing that out of that 6, you're going to go give 3 to a buyer's agent. And that's what's going to be an MLS. What you're seeing now, more often than not, you're seeing 2.5. Because of the inventory being so short and our multiple offers and the market has been so hot and so hurried, you're not seeing the buyer's agent commission equal even to what the seller's is. There's a lot of government intervention right now because some lawsuits going on from the DOJ and NAR, National Association of Realtors, saying that sellers should not have to pay a buyer's agent. I do not know when that's totally going to change. It very likely we'll see a lot of headlines this year. That's what I've been told, that it is changing. And when it's changing, then you're going to see change happen in your marketplace. Your seller may say, well, I'm not paying for the buyer's agent. The buyer's agent can pay the buyer can pay the buyer's agent. That's the big fuss right now. You may or may not begin to see that across the board, but because of the headlines and the news media covering the negative side, you're going to have some fallout. So when you are representing a seller, it's still very much an incentivized business where people are working for themselves, and a buyer's agent is going to be more drawn or more but influential in a house that has a better buyer's agent commission. Again, that's what they're trying to eliminate. So we don't know how that's going to work out, but right now, know that you're going to see sometimes maybe 1%, 1.5%, 1.75, 2.5. Nobody can dictate that. It's all supposed to be negotiable. However, there are some things that become more usable in marketplaces. And right now I'm seeing more 2.5 than I am 3. All that to say, don't be surprised if you have some pushback from the seller. Okay, this right here is your protection period. If for whatever reason the house doesn't sell during the time that you have it listed, or if you terminate the listing for some reason, and then they turn around and try to sell it on their own without paying you commission, unless they list with somebody else, you would have a right to go back and claim commission. Now, there'll probably be a legal expense involved, but you'd have a right to. So this right here is what's called protection period. I typically put 60 or 90 days. Personally, I just do 90. Okay, I want to make sure they wait at least 3 months before they go back and try to buy it on their own. Basically, through all this, and just take the time to read through it. I mean, more times than one. I mean, I wish you'd read through this at least once a month, hopefully because you're using it, but you want to be able to answer questions and highlight some things as you're going through the buyer's agency or the listing agreement. All right. But I'm not going to go through all this today because we've got a lot of forms to go through with. But right now you want to make sure you've got a list of the owner's duties. This is what the owners, you as an agent, are expecting the owners to give to you or to cooperate with you. This right here, I would put NA. You don't need to be responsible for taking care of any expenses. Somebody could be in Timbuktu and they can still Zelle or Venmo money to the loan guy. So with electronic transfers right now, you really don't need to take on the responsibility of making payments for somebody saying, well, I never agreed to pay you. So anyway, I would put NA in that blank. We just went through the multiple listing service for you to initial only one option. All right, you're going to initial one option. Make sure that if you have a lockbox that you're going to use on the house, make sure that they check that they agree. And please use the super iBoxes. You know, when people go into the iBox, they have to put their code in, and at least you can have a record of people who've been in the house. If there's a combo, I mean, it is so dangerous to put a combination on there because, and so help me if we had 2 buyers who actually moved into houses before they closed on them because they found the code or watched the agent writing the code down. And just thought, well, I'm buying the house. I mean, so I'm closing tomorrow. So they start moving in the night before. And it's like, no, you don't own the house yet. Okay. So make sure that you try to use the iBox, even if you have to borrow one. All right. I know they're expensive, but make sure you use those. There's a number of things to be aware of. Right here, of course, is your lead-based paint. If the house was built before 1978, remember, from pre-licensing, you have to have the lead-based paint disclosure. And you want to make sure to have that in your stack of things and that you get to the seller to complete. I think this is kind of interesting. Before going into litigation, if there's a conflict or a problem, the National Association of Realtors provides mediation services. So you can have things mediated by a trained mediator at the association if you get into a conflict on whatever with the seller, and they put it right here in the listing agreement, which I think is a very valid place to put it. Another thing that you want to be aware of in this listing agreement is on the photography. The seller irrevocably conveys any and all of the seller's audio, photography, and videography rights in perpetuity involving seller and seller's family and seller's property to the broker for marketing and advertising and any other purpose deemed necessary by the broker. In other words, right now the photography is owned by the broker, no matter if he is of some of the seller's provision, if the seller provides it. But I would caution you on this. Copyrights law is saying that the photographer is the one who owns the photography. So if you're going to have professional photography done, which I highly recommend, you might want to make sure that there is some type of an agreement with the photographer that you have the right to use it in multiple places, not just, like just in the MLS. There are some photographers who've been very proprietary. Others don't care. So just realize that from copyright standpoint, it's the person who takes the photography that has the rights to it, which basically it's saying here would be the broker. Okay. And surveillance. This is another thing I think is kind of interesting. You have to get the seller's permission to disclose that there's potential surveillance equipment in the house. I'm thinking, that seems strange to me. And I'm just being truthful about this. I mean, why would you have to have their permission to disclose that there's surveillance? First of all, you probably can see the cameras, but I think having that as an option needs to be addressed, because if the seller is saying, I'm going to have hidden cameras, I think I would have serious questions as to whether or not I want to deal with that person as a seller, to be honest with you. So again, that just gives you the right to have the conversation. All right. Surveillance is not a person's right to deceive someone coming in. So I would have a problem with that. So that's your personal decision. Okay. Now here under number 28, here's where you put your fixtures addendum, unless you put it up front. And we talked about this. So anytime that there's a change, let's say, I think Vincent asked a while ago, can we change that coming soon date? This is where you would have to write it, Vincent, that the date is being changed to such and such a date. There is not a form that's provided. In North Carolina, we have a form that's provided to make some changes, like maybe reducing the price or increasing the price or extending it a period of time. Everything has to be done on this agreement right here. There is not a separate form. You just have to put it right in here. One of the things that you'll notice is anywhere there's signatures for an owner or seller buyer, there's going to be 4 spots for signatures. You see here, 1, 2, 3, there's 4. And you might want to make sure that if there's more than 1 or 2 buyers or sellers in South Carolina, you can have up to 4 on any document. North Carolina has a form called additional signatures addendum. They do not have that in South Carolina, but they have extended the number of people to sign it. And again, here you'd have the owner's mailing address, the firm name, and it would be by you as the agent. And you see all the initials here. There's initials for 4 owners. And make sure you initial this, okay? The word broker is applicable to the broker in charge in South Carolina. However, you are designated by the broker to be able to initial that. Now, we talked about that. We talked about those. The next thing I wanted to talk to you about is their property disclosure. Well, I'm almost there. There it is. All right. Again, see this right here? There's your seal. Just as in North Carolina, the lawmakers are the ones who initiate, who are published the residential property disclosures. And these disclosures are from the seller. You do not ever put pencil to paper, nor do you click in your e-signature programs. These must be done by the seller. Sellers have a legal responsibility to disclose to buyers if there is a problem, if there's not a problem, or if they're choosing not to say if there's a problem. So this kind of explains it. I've highlighted it here for you. If they answer yes, or if they answer no, or no representation. All right. Now, one of the things you'll quickly understand is that you have a responsibility as a listing agent. If you know the seller is not being truthful about something, you do have a responsibility to make it known to anybody who would be making an offer. Okay. And you have to tell the seller that. Again, you might want to question that relationship, but say, if you know that there's water standing in the crawl space, and he says there's no water problems, no damage, you're gonna have to disclose that. There are certain things what North Carolina calls reasonably should have known. There's things that speaking of water in the crawl space, I'm not sure that I'd be reasonably supposed to know that, because I don't stick my head and I don't go in the basement, or not the basement, the crawl space. But some people do, but I can open the crawl space door and shine my flashlight in there and see if I can see any evidence of standing water. More likely, I would be noticing rings on the ceiling from a leak, possibly, or I might notice some wood rot somewhere, probably more so than that the damage or the water standing in the crawl space. Now, on this disclosure, you might want to down here make sure that you get the property address, okay? And right here, again, this is only acknowledging a receipt of the copy of this. This is not saying that the buyer agrees. This, when the owner signs it, that's his disclosure to the best of his knowledge. When the seller, or the buyer, excuse me, when the buyer looks at this, they have to initial it as well, just that they have it, not anything further. Now let's talk about these different categories. And this one's kind of near and dear to my heart. Number one, water supply and sanitary sewage disposal systems. Those of you who've been around a little while know what a crusade our compliance department has been on from the septic, sewer, and water disclosures, right? Whatever the seller puts, the seller puts. But I require you to have an agent discovery form so that you have verified what the seller discloses. And the reason we do that is to try to save you money and save money on the because we've had so many issues on the septic, maybe having a septic system, and the seller said no, it's on city county. We've had the same thing with wells and city county water. So we have our own little form, our little verification form. And obviously we'll talk about that in just a moment, but they put this number one on their disclosure form. The water supply, the water quality, the water pressure. Water pressure is interesting on this one. It's not on the North Carolina form. And the sanitary sewage disposal system for any wastewater. Basically, you have some descriptions here. Do not miss these little boxes here. All right. You definitely want to make sure that you're not filling it out, but you're helping to help them to make sure that they don't miss these boxes, right? All right. Right here, septic or sewer. You're going to see this more than anything else. You might possibly have a community sewer. You might possibly have a community well even. By the way, in Kannapolis, They think they've got city county, but it's actually a community well. Would you believe it? The whole town of Kannapolis. But anyway, the water pipes. A lot of times the seller doesn't know what the water pipes are. If they don't know, they don't know. All right. Or they can disclose. Polybutylene is one of the pipes that had a class action suit years and years ago. It caused a lot of damage to a lot of houses. I personally had one of those. So I do not have polybutylene pipes anymore because they redid my house, replumbed my house. PEX piping is the most popular right now that you're seeing. There are some PEX piping companies that are now out of business because they did not do too much better than the polybutylene manufacturers. But by and large, PEX is a good product. It just depends on the particular manufacturer. Roofs and chimneys and floors, foundations. This was added not too long ago on this particular form. When was the roof replaced? Or when was it installed initially? Usually is when the house is built, obviously. So that's why they ask what date was it built. All right. And right here, they want you, the seller, to describe if there's been any leaks or any modifications, any repairs. Always err on the side of disclosure. If the seller says, well, I don't want to call attention to it. I had it fixed. Why should I disclose it? Because an inspector is going to find out it's been replaced, and they're going to ask about it. And when they ask about it, that's caused mistrust with the buyer. So you might as well go ahead and disclose it and say receipts available upon request. You don't make the receipts out there to everybody, but someone who's wanted to make an offer, they should have a right to see when the replacement was done, when it was repaired, how long ago has it been, to see if the fix worked, you know? So just make sure that you advise your sellers to disclose on the air on the side of disclosure, okay? Plumbing, electrical, obviously these things are pretty self-explanatory. You just make sure that the seller doesn't miss the inside boxes. Now, look here, right here. Present or past infestation of wood destroying insects or organisms or dry rot or fungus, the damage from which has not been repaired. All right. When a buyer does a termite inspection, they get a report called a CL 100 in South Carolina. That's what it's called. And on that CL 100, the termite inspector or the inspector is going to be looking for any type of fungal growth. That fungal growth may be mold, it may not be, but they're going to note on there if there's been water damage, if there's water that there's dampness that is over 20% under in that crawl space. They're going to have to remediate that if it's higher than 20%. If it's under 20%, they do not have to, the seller does not have to remediate, but you want to make sure that the seller understands it's not only termite, it is other wood destroying insects or organisms and the fungi, okay? And obviously if there's some present infestation, they need to disclose it. Most of the time they don't know, all right? Right here on this section, make sure that building codes have been complied with. Permits are ever more important these days, particularly because you've got a lot of people who are doing what they call flipping. You know, they're buying houses and making them look wonderful, and they're so appealing, the buyer just falls in love with it, and then they realize the structure, they're falling apart, you know, but they look good, you know. So just make sure that the flipper, the person who does repairs, gets the required permits that they can be inspected by the county inspectors, so that the seller doesn't have problems and the buyer doesn't have problems with not having the permits. Easements continue to be a challenge. You can ask the seller if he has a survey. The buyer cannot rely on that survey legally they can look at it and they can see if there appears to be any problems when he had the survey done. But I always recommend a survey for the buyers. A lot of times I don't want to spend the money, but it's so very important that they know what they're buying. They know the boundaries of what they're buying, and they need to know if there's any encroachments or if there are easements. So we constantly have issues of that. Right here, flood insurance covering the property. Okay, you're going to be the first ones I get to tell of this. I just found this out. The flood insurance is offered through FEMA. All right, it's a government organization. The flood insurance has been excessively high across the board, and now the new law came in just this year that the rates can be increased across the board 10%, excuse me, $10. Anyway, everybody says, well, that's wonderful. $10 is not bad at all. And what the instructor told us yesterday was that is only for people in the mountains that are not close to the ocean. If they're close to the ocean, then it could increase up to 600%. His personal home had increased 600% because they are obviously trying to shift the majority of the cost to those who are going to have the greatest risk. So if you're selling some property that requires flood insurance, you need to have them talk to an insurance provider and get the full scoop on flood insurance. There is a form South Carolina has a form that shows you some websites to go to. There's some major changes happening this coming year, even on floodplains. They're trying to eliminate floodplains. So we've all got an awful lot to learn this year about flood insurance, but for the time being, the form that's available is what we need to use to educate a seller and or a buyer. Now, this next thing is there's 3 places on the disclosure I want to tell you about, but are you seeing solar panels on many houses or listings that you're looking at right now? Solar panels have become an issue. And what the attorney was telling us yesterday in this webinar that I was in, he said that where I typed this in, this is to remind me to tell you all this. This is not on the form. You see it's blue. It's not black. If there are solar panels on that listing, your seller needs to address this right here. Describe any green energy. Solar panels are considered green energy, right? And there's a real push in North Carolina to get solar panels, and in South Carolina. So make sure if there are solar panels that they address it right here. And the one thing that this attorney told us about was there is a solar panel lease agreement, and you need to attach it. Now you can attach it right here, or you can come down here to this section here where it talks about if there's any leases. You might want to put it down there, but just make sure that you put it somewhere that there is a solar panel lease agreement, and it will transfer to the buyer. And if it does transfer to the buyer, there is likely a transfer fee, but that is not the seriousness. The seriousness is how much money per month that buyer might be assuming. To buy out a lease could cost $50,000 to $70,000. So that means that buyer might be assuming that much debt. And so it is critically important right now, if there are solar panels, that you, as the listing agent, get a copy of that lease and attach it with the property condition report. so that a buyer and the lender can even know if the buyer is going to qualify. It could throw out qualification. Okay. So it's really important that you understand that about, again, we have not seen an awful lot in our area. We are seeing more and more with the push. And you as a listing agent are responsible to make the seller aware of that, to make sure that he puts it on the disclosure form. Okay. Right here is the part about a homeowners association. If there is a homeowners association that this property is under their domain, you need to have a separate disclosure. It's called an addendum, this residential property disclosure statement addendum. Now, this is kind of funny. Let me show you this. This form, the disclosure form, is 5 pages. This last page is the signature page, page 5 of 5. But look at here, there's another page. That's the addendum. They do not have it numbered. There's no number on here. It's just an addendum out there. But when you do pull up the residential property disclosure, it will include this just in case you need it. Okay. Don't worry about the date. It doesn't have one on it. So, but they did add this into the residential property disclosure that if there is a property management company or HOA, you check here and obviously you see the asterisk and it tells you must have that addendum. If you don't need the addendum, don't worry about it, but it's in there anyway. All right. This is where you're going to put some explanation of any of the problems that you've identified up front. Now, this page is kind of interesting. It's unique. Current status of the property are factors which may affect the closing. Owner occupied, that's okay. Leased, you may have a problem getting the tenant out. Got one just yesterday, cannot get the tenant out. The tenant's even been taken to court and he's evicted and he's still not leaving the property. So they can't close on the property. Short sale foreclosure, we haven't had those in years, but I have a feeling the next year we're going to be able to see it. Bankruptcy, estate, we're seeing more and more estates. Do not list an estate until you know if it's gone through probate and you know that it can be sold. We're just now getting through a tail end of over 3 months dealing with, actually where one of our agents is buying the property. The woman's mother died and she wouldn't put the house on the market the next week. I mean, she was need to get rid of that house because she couldn't make the mortgage payment. So she wanted to get rid of the house immediately. Well, the agent should have had enough sense to say, slow down now. We can't put it on the market yet. The listing agent puts it on the market and they immediately get an offer. Again, my agent wins the bid, multiple offers. And it's taken them over 3 months. It's cost unbelievably amount of money because it wasn't ready. So listing agents, do not jump into an estate immediately. You need to know who has the right to sell it. You need to know if it's an executor, executrix, an administrator, is there a will? Just be very, very careful if there's an estate and call me and we'll talk it through. If it's vacant, you want to know how long it's been vacant because there's probably some issues if it's been vacant very long. Anyway, I think that's pretty good information to have on the property disclosure. And right here is whether or not if an addendum, see that addendum, if that's attached or not. And here's where your seller is going to sign it. Then look here. Look at all these things that the purchaser has a right to have before signing the disclosure. They have a right to see all these things. Are you getting all those things ready to give to a buyer's agent? You might better be thinking about it because these are the things that you need to collect from the seller to give to a buyer's agent before the buyer's agent actually signs this. There is not a 3-day right of rescission on the South Carolina form though. So you don't have to worry about that. There is on North Carolina. Okay, there's your addendum. Basically, that's just identifying what the HOA covers. So that shouldn't be too difficult. What you do need to verify though and confirm that the monthly amount is what the seller has conveyed that it is. You want to make sure, and you want to make sure if there's a transfer fee and by that HOA. Okay. Now here's this flood insurance disclosure that I was telling you about. This will be changing, but right now this is the form that you can give to your seller and to your buyer so that they are more they're aware of the flood insurance. And now this is something different. This is another canopy in MLS. This form, if you're selling a home in an area like Sun City or Carolina Lakes or Four Seasons or Regent Park, there are a lot of areas that everybody knows is a 55 and older community. And it's like, well, what is the big deal? Well, apparently the big deal is at any given day, the HUD can pull back that qualification. So on every listing in Sun City, and you might have had 6 of them, like one of my agents has, every time she lists one, she has to go get this form filled out by someone representing the Sun City. And she can be the witness. Okay, it's okay for the listing agent to be the witness, but you have to get someone who's going to certify it from the neighborhood. Often it's going to be the board president or the board treasurer. It might be a property manager, but typically it's going to be somebody with the board. So make sure that you get somebody to sign this and turn it in, or MLS will get you. They send out notices and say you're going to be fined if you don't get that in. So they give you 2 days, so 48 hours to get it in. So make sure if you get that notice from MLS that you get that in. Now here is the septic and sewer discovery form that I referred to a while ago. Make sure that you don't shirk your verifications. It is so important to you and to your seller, but more often to you, because it could cost you thousands of dollars, as it's cost some of my agents thousands of dollars. And therefore, we have this form right here. It's important that you check with the water department, but don't forget to ask about sewer. Many times you'll just call the water department and you just ask about water. Well, they too can tell you about the sewer. All right. They can tell you if it is or is not available, and they can tell you if it is or is not connected. What's the difference? Why wouldn't you think it's available? I mean, if it's connected, it's available, obviously. But you know, there are a lot of neighborhoods where the county has gone through and made it available, and the owners have chosen not to connect because there's a tap fee, like $4,500, I think $4,500 to $5,600. And the owner said, well, I've never had any trouble with my septic, so why am I going to pay that much money to tap into the city county sewer? So they don't. So you might be in a neighborhood where 75 or 80% of the property is serviced by the city county sewer, but yours is not. Okay, I had that happen too. So you want to make sure, is it available? Is it connected? If it's available and not connected, you want to be able to know that, because maybe the buyer wants to be able to connect it. So that could be a selling point for you. If it's not available nor connected, then you're going to be on a septic. If it's on a septic, then you're going to have to go down here and follow this little pattern right here. If the property has a private septic, the agent affirms, in other words, the agent is going to try to find a copy of the septic permit. Why is a septic permit important? The septic permit is assuring that owner that if the permit is for 3 bedrooms, they're not going to have a septic failure of any kind, because it's designed for 3 bedrooms. They've got 3 bedrooms. Life should be good. That septic should last a long time, years and years and years. If it is designed, the permit for 3, but the seller wants you to sell it as a 4-bedroom. You cannot do that. That's false advertising. You must find out if the permit is for 3 or for 4 bedrooms. And whatever, if it's for 4 bedrooms, life is good. If it's not for 4 bedrooms, it's for 3, you have to advertise as 3. Now you may put a note in the remarks if you couldn't get a copy of the permit, you can put in remarks that no permit available, but we're finding out that counties have been spoofing us. The state says that the septic permits are required to be available for the life expectancy of the septic system. And there's a lot of counties that are not providing that. And they tell us that that all permits are archived after 6 years. So there's a little bit of a discrepancy we're finding out in some counties. And that very well may be in their county, but per the state law, they're supposed to be able to provide it. So you want to make sure that you don't take the word of the person in the water and sewer area. You want to go to the Environmental Health Services Department. Environmental health in South Carolina is DHEC. Okay, they're the health services. So you might want to make sure that you contact DHEC in South Carolina. And if you get the permit, attach it. If you cannot get the permit, obviously you want to say who you called in what county, and you want to put the person's name. It's Sally or Tiffany or whoever. You want to put somebody's name in here that you talk to. And if it is, obviously, if it's available, you want to make a copy. Let me explain this. If you're the listing agent, which we're talking about you as listing agent, you sign it. Nobody else has to sign it. Okay. This is just you. You're verifying so that you can have it in your file. So when you advertise, you know you're advertising correctly. And that is basically CYA. Okay. If you were the buyer's agent, then I would want you to verify it. And then I want you to get the buyer to sign that you gave it to them. The seller, you already got the property disclosure, but you want to make sure that the buyer has a copy of this form if you're the buyer's agent. You do not get anybody else in another firm to sign it. This is just your verification that you either share with your buyer or you put it in the file. Now this is your explanation on that. What I just explained. It's in writing. Okay. Now in South Carolina, there is not a professional services disclosure. If those of you who've been doing North Carolina, you know there is a professional services disclosure. So again, that Fort Mill, Keller Williams and I got their attorney drafted this for us to use. And again, it itemizes all the things that sellers typically are going to experience as the buyer has these services done. The buyer is going to order the services, but sellers need to be aware of what services are going to be done, at their home. This is not required for a listing. It's recommended that you expose this or explain this to the seller. For buyers, it is required. All right. Because right here where they either waive the service or they select the service, who orders it is critical. All right. If this buyer is going to order it, great, you're out of the picture. But if the buyer wants you to order it, we want to make sure that the buyer signs this form agreeing that they have given you the authority to order it. Otherwise, you're going to get stuck with the bill if it doesn't close and the buyer won't pay it. Now, this has a good explanation here about surveys and about home warranties. You might want to make sure you do present this to the seller. If they have a survey, go ahead and provide it. Although it's not the one that you can rely on unless it's updated to the present day. And home warranties, we probably going to start seeing more home warranties. We have not seen that many the last couple of years because of the market, but I think the sellers need to know that they can have insurance coverage or warranty coverage during the time that they have it listed. if they're going to offer it and this buyer's going to come in and ask for it, they might as well have the advantage. So you might want to provide some of the warranty brochures for them to make a choice on. Again, that's what that is for. Now, the security system disclosure, this is, again, these are worksheets. These are things that not so much for you to have for legal recourse as much as to help you to remember to talk. Gosh, we've got so many things to remember to talk to our sellers about, educate. But you know what? That's our value. They can get a lot of information off of Zillow or Trulia or Realtor.com. I mean, they can get so much information, but they cannot get the counsel and they cannot get the advantage of some of the things that we're putting on worksheets to remind you to show your value to them. I mentioned a moment ago about the solar panels. They're not going to find anything about information about solar panels on those websites or the technology, but you're the one that's going to know about it and be able to explain some things. Same thing with the security system. The security system is not part of the sale of the house. The security system often is installed in our present day houses. So therefore it's a fixture, it's there. But you know, the issue that you got to run into is the servicing. They have service contracts and they may be what, $39 or $79 a month or whatever. Do you know that contract has to be settled before the house closes? So you want to make the seller aware that they need to find out, is there a transfer fee? Is there a fee if they choose to terminate with, what is it, ADT or CVI? Is the seller going to be charged a fee if they terminate and don't move it to another house? Maybe they're moving to Florida. They don't, they're not going to go from here to Florida with the same contract. So they need to discover, and if you don't pull out this little form and remind them of it, they're not going to think about the security system. So you want to make sure, and then when you're doing this, the discussion about the security system, make sure to find out if there are accessories. Because see, accessories can be taken away. They don't cause damage to the house. They're not like a fixture. So they can be removed. So you want to make sure what is going to stay, what's built into the house, are there accessories, and that's a part of that service contract that's going to be taken away if the buyer doesn't assume. So get familiar with the aspects of what goes along with the security system. So now we've gone through lots of questions and lots of answers, hopefully. And did I rouse any questions in your all's mind? I went pretty fast today since we got started late, but you're welcome to ask any questions. I'll sit here as long as you need me to. Did you put your email address in my chat box so that I can send you out these forms? Make sure you did that for me and I'll send it out to you. Hi, Ingrid. Good to see each one of you today. Well, did I confuse you anymore? Shanta looks like she's a little confused.
No, I took a lot of notes, so.
Oh, you're a good girl. You're a good girl. I can't listen to something without taking notes. I had this morning, I had a 3-hour webinar for brokers in charge. And I tell you what, it was my mind was just in a whirl, but it was good, but oh mercy. So I had a time switching gears and getting to South Carolina from all the stuff that I was listening to this morning, but I took a lot of notes too. Right. Well, you all behave yourselves now. And if you have a question, you know my email address is my full name @kw.com. And if you want to call me, my number is 704-904-6625. God bless you. Have a good day.
Thank you.
I'll see you next week for buyers, okay?
Okay.
No, next Thursday's
Week
Thanksgiving.
after. Yeah.
Oh my legs, they alive. Yeah, we'll do that. We'll do the week after. In fact, I was looking at the calendar the other day and I thought, I can't do it next Thursday, but the following Thursday, if I'm not mistaken, is December 1. It's the first Thursday in December.
And normally we would go to North Carolina contacts, but I think we'll do South Carolina buyers that day. What do you think? I think we'll do that. All right. Y'all take care.
Thank you, Saber.
Right.
Bye.
Bye.